5 is approved by the county committee, you can't come back in and change your mind. So be sure of your decision before you start. Now, if you're a dairy that, for instance, you're a child that took over your parents' dairy and your parents are the people that received the money, they do have the option to transfer either the 75% or the 50% to you. And you would come in and sign up for that and specify who you want it to go to, and then they would come in and accept that gift and apply it toward the premium or take the payment. So let's talk about that credit repayment option. These are basically the 75%. If you choose to take that, FSA is going to keep that money, and each year we're going to apply that towards your premiums. The most important item to remember is that that balance cannot be cashed out. You can't use up part of it and then come in and I give you cash for it. That's not an option. However, if you were to quit milking today and you took the credit and then in 2021 you come back in, you could pick up that credit balance and begin using it again. We will keep a track of those. It will be done in our software, and it looks like that's going to work very well. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that so far? Okay, we're going to move on. So, dairy margin coverage. This is a new program. It's a risk management tool that was implemented with the 2018 Farm Bill. To be able to participate, you must produce and commercially market milk from cows in the U.S. You must have had production history, and if you had it from the margin protection program, we're going to just transfer that right over into DMC and you'll just start from there. If you never participated and you came in and signed up for the market facilitation program that took place for the 2018, we will reestablish that production history and your local office will work through that with you. We can't be a federal, state, or local government, and you can, this is a big change to the program, is you can be enrolled in the LGM dairy and the dairy revenue protection along with the dairy margin coverage. So that's a huge benefit to dairy. Remember, I want to emphasize this. This is a risk management tool, similar to a crop insurance for row crops. The USDA worked with several outside organizations and developed a DMC tool, looks very similar to the MPP tool. One of the things, if you use the FSA tool, that works for Google and Firefox. However, if you use Internet Explorer, it does not work well. So the University of Wisconsin did come up with a tool that works with the Internet Explorer that mirrors exactly the same thing as the USDA tool, and that's at that dairymarkets.org. This is a great tool. I'm sure Scott's going to go into some details about how to use that tool and the different options there. It can tell you how much your premiums, it can tell you forecasts. FSA is not going to help you make the decision. That's what the purpose of this tool is. So let's get right into the DMC coverage program and talk about sign up. Starts today, June 17th, and runs through September 20th. The coverage for 2020 through 2023 has not been determined. So you want to watch your bulletins, your newsletters, websites. I'm sure your dairy co-ops, extension will relay that to you as well when USDA announces that information. Most important thing to remember is there are no late file provisions. So if you are interested in participating in this program, you have to complete your options by September 20th this year. It's an annual election, or you can make an election for 5 years, and we call that the lock-in, and that will give you a 25% discount in the premiums, and I'll go over that in the slide coming up. This is a single year option. This is a huge, I highlighted it. You don't have to annually participate again. You can participate in 19, 21, and 23 if you want to do that. Each year you participate, you'll owe your premium and you'll owe your $100. I should say you will owe your premium if you choose a premium coverage level. The coverage period, so let's talk about 19 because we are starting in the middle of the year. So your coverage is going to go back to January 1st and it'll be through December 31st of 2019. Starting in 2020, it'll be January 1 through December 31st for each of the remaining years of the dairy margin coverage program. For 2019, this is another big plus for dairies, is if you dissolve during 2019, so if you have already dissolved, you can come in now and just get your coverage for the months that you were in operation. So let's talk about the lock-in. It's a 5-year agreement for 2019 through 2023. You have this, once you lock in, you're going to have the same coverage for all 5 years. And you have to pay your administrative fee of $100 and your premium annually. Your premium will be calculated, you'll get the discount, and then that will be divided by 5, and that's what you'll owe us annually by the September 1st deadline. You also have to come back in and sign a new contract for each year. As I said before, the lock-in includes a 25% discount on your total premiums. It's available only during the 2019 enrollment, unless if you know a producer that decides to start milking in 2021, they can come in and do the lock-in for the remaining period of the program. So let's talk about your coverage levels and your percentage. This part is similar, but they've added more options for producers in choosing that percentage. So you will have the choice of either using between 5 to 95% of your established production history, and you can do that in 5% increments. You could do 80%, you could do 20%. The coverage percentage is applied or selected first to determine the pounds of history covered. So if you had 5 million pounds, we'd multiply it by 95% if that was the coverage that you chose. Let's talk about the margin triggers. Now this is going to take me a little bit to explain because I think the next slide explains it a little better. There's 2 tiers. The first tier is for your first 5 million pounds. And your coverage level choices are between $4 and $9.50. And that's in 50-cent increments. So there's a $4 coverage, there's a $4.50 coverage, there's a $5, $5.50. In the tier 2, which is over 5 million pounds. So if you're a producer with 10 million pounds, your first 5 million would go with tier 1, and your second 5 million would go with tier 2. There are different premiums for each of those tiers. The biggest change with the tier 2 is your coverage is for $4 to $8. And let me go to the next screen because I think it does a better job of explaining this. So the margin trigger is for the first 5 million pounds. So in the first tier, you can select $4 through $8. Then in this example, then in tier 2, you automatically get $8. But if in tier 1, you selected $9.50, then in tier 2, you can choose any coverage level that you want. So if you wanted to cover your first 5 million pounds and pay the highest premium on that, then, and you chose between $8.50 and $9.50, You could, on your second tier, choose $4 and not pay any premium on that tier 2 pounds. We'll go through a couple of examples for you later in the slides, okay? Here's the premiums. They are drastically different than what they were in MPP, and you can kind of see, to me, this table gives you a little bit better picture of where those options of what you choose become the same, how to choose your premiums, coverages, and what you get for tier 1 and tier 2. So, can you change your coverage election? Yes, you can change it during the election period. But as of the last day of the sign-up or the coverage period, that's final. You can't make any changes. Any changes that you make must be documented on the new form and signed by all producers. And if you chose a high coverage and you paid us that entire premium, and then you came back in during the election and chose a lower coverage that was a lower premium, we would refund you that difference. So again, here's your place to choose, to look at the tools and use those. Those will be your best helps. All right, let's talk about how to calculate the premiums. The premiums are due by a participating dairy operation that elects the coverage greater than capped, and you are required to pay that premium in addition to the annual $100 fee. I am recommending that to help producers make the premium payment every year, that is to use our assignment form, and we did that last year in 2018. Basically, you assign any payments due, and you ask those to be applied against the premium, and then you get the net money once we've made the premium payment, okay? Premiums are required to be paid each year of participation. When you elect the buy-up coverage, the coverage again runs from January 1 through December 31st. You have to sign the CCC 801, which shows you the calculated premium due, and one premium for the entire covered production history, and that's both the tier 1 and tier 2 premium are added together and appear on the form. The due date for 2019 is September 20th, 2019. Since we don't know when the sign-up for 2020 is, that will be determined 2021 through 2023. Your premium will be due on September 1st. Administrative fees and premium fees. As I talked about, there's a $100 annual fee that is due when you participate, but you do not owe us that fee every year. It's only when you choose to participate. There is an exemption waiver possible, similar to what we did in 2018. You would want to talk to your local office about that. Your $100 is due by the end of each year, that September 1st date, and it's payable to CCC, and you pay it in your administrative office. It is not refundable. The dairy fee for the lock-in coverage, so for the dairy operation that elects the 5-year option, they're required to pay the administrative fee annually each year through 2023, unless they were exempt or unless it's waived by FSA due to a death, retirement, or permanent dissolution. Buy-up coverage. Buy-up coverage must be paid for the higher coverage levels ranging from $450 to $950. Premiums for new dairy. So if you're a new dairy, you can walk in and sign up. So if you start in 2020, you can walk in. But you have to do that within 60 days of starting to first commercially market milk. And I will make this comment. If there's any changes to the family operation, for instance, if son wants to buy into the operation and is going to bring some cows and we want to do an intergenerational increase, it's a one-time decision, but you need to do that within 60 days or you have to wait till the next year. Same with succession. If dad is milking and decides to just let son take it over without adding any cows, you need to do that within 60 days. Here's the premiums again. You can see the differences between each of the $50 coverage levels and then the amount of the premiums for the Tier 1 and Tier 2. Calculation of the buyout premium. So we're going to take that elected coverage and we're going to multiply that by your production history in pounds. Then we're going to divide that by 100 to convert that to hundredweight. And then we're going to take that hundredweight and we're going to multiply it by the elected coverage level. For me, it's easier to see that in an example. So if you have 3.5 million pounds and we multiply that by 95%, that's 3.325 million. We divide that by 100, that's 33,250. Your premium for a 950 coverage is 15 cents. Your total premium due is $4,987.50. We're not going to go ahead and round. We used to round up, round down. We're not doing that anymore. We're just leaving it straight, exactly the calculation. Second tier coverage, a participating dairy operation that elects the coverage of 850, 9, or 950 only under Tier 1 can elect a different coverage threshold under Tier 2 on the covered production that's in excess of that 5 million pounds. So let's look at an example. We have a dairy that has 9 million pounds. Their 95% coverage is 8.55 million. At the $9 is their selected choice. Their first, I'm going to drop to the second bullet, their first 5 million pounds would be assessed at the 950, but they can choose any coverage level between the $4 and the $8. And if you look at those examples, that would be something that you really want to watch because those premiums are pretty high on the Tier 2 side. So this dairy chose the 950 for the first 5 million pounds, and for the 3.55 million pounds that were in Tier 2, they elected to go with the $4, so their total premium due was only $7,500. Now, this is an example of a producer that chose the $8 coverage. He can't select a different coverage in Tier 2. And what I want you to look at is that premium in Tier 2. And look what that makes his premium. Whereas if he had selected the 950 coverage, it would have been that $7,500, and then he could have chosen a lower dollar amount threshold in Tier 2. So that's something that you really want to work with the tool and work with the extension or your co-op people to help you figure that out. The lock-in. Remember, anytime there's a death or retirement or permanent dissolution, we will stop and the lock-in will just stay with FSA. We won't be paying that money out. So let's do the discount example quickly. In this election, the producer decided to go with 950 and 95% coverage. His premium without the lock-in discount was $4,987.50. With the lock-in, we just multiplied that by 75%. That gave him a premium due of $3740.63. To figure out what you owe for the 5 years, you multiply that by 5. That $3,740.63 will be due each year, along with the $100. For this producer, he chose 60% coverage. He has 10 million pounds, and he chose 850. So then he could select a different coverage level in Tier 2. And you can see that his total premium due was the $8,350, but the reduced premium was $6,262.50. You multiply that by 5 years, and he would owe, for the total of the 5 years, $31,312.50. Okay, let's talk about that credit repayment option, because that's a unique ability to apply that money that you paid us in 2014 through 17 that net money less your payment, to apply it towards your premiums for the DMC. So our software is going to calculate it for us. Anything that the credit doesn't cover, the dairy will be responsible for paying the difference. And remember, if you dissolve during this period of time, we're not going to cash that out. This is like a gift card that you get from your local store. You can't take the gift card in and get cash back for it when you're done and you still have money left on it. You have to spend all of the money with FSA. Now, if you are a dairy operation that dissolves and then resumes commercially marketing milk at a later date, you will be able to pick up that remaining credit, okay? Payment calculation. How are we going to calculate the payment? We are going to take the margin trigger amount, and that's a fancy formula that the economists in Washington work up, and I'm sure Scott will go over that discussion here pretty quickly. So you're going to take your covered production history, which is in pounds. You're going to divide that by 100 to get your hundredweight, and then you're going to divide it by 12 because you're only getting paid for 1 month, and there's going to be a margin for each month. So the easiest way to do that is to talk about an example. So in this particular example, this producer had 5 million pounds of production history. The margin for January, and there's a huge change to the margins that was announced by USDA on Friday. They have recalculated the margin calculation that has resulted in different margins for January, February, March, and April. And I have a slide a little bit later that'll tell you exactly what those new rates are. The new rate for January is $1.71. The margin was changed to $7.71. His 95% divided by 100 is 47,500 hundredweight. You divide that by 12. So his monthly hundredweight that is eligible for a payment is 3,958. Multiply that by the $1.79, and that gives you $6,645.56. Assuming that he is the sole person and gets 100% of that, then that would be his payment. If you were sharing 50-50 with another gentleman in the dairy operation, and you signed the contract that way, then you would split that money 50-50. Your payment is that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to tell you, and I do not have that slide. What was backspace? So one of the things for this example, this producer's premium is $7,125. His January payment is the $6,645.56. His February payment is $5,903.04. His March payment is $3,118.59. His April payment is $2,524.57 for a total of $18,191.76. If we subtract $7,125, that's a net payment of $10,966.76. Now, I do reserve the right that I have made a typo on these, and so we will go back through and double check these slides to make sure they are correct when they're published. So, briefly, what happens if you don't pay your fees? Your fee is due at the time of enrollment or by the end of the coverage. Failure to pay the fee by the end of the coverage will result in no coverage for that year. A dairy operation that locked in coverage for 19 through 23 received the premium and received the discount is obligated to pay that annual fee annually. A dairy operation that fails to pay that fee by the applicable due date will not receive an indemnity until the fee has been paid. Buy-up fees are due by September 1st, except for 19, which is due September 20th of 2019. We don't know what that date there of December 13th, 2019 is incorrect, so don't hold me to that date. If you don't pay the money, we will create what we call a receivable, which is a debt collection method for us on October 1st. Failure to pay the premium will result in the dairy operation not receiving the indemnity until all premiums have been paid in full. A dairy operation making an annual election is not able to purchase buy-up if the premiums are not current. Once you pay the premiums current, you regain coverage. A dairy operation that regains coverage by paying all of the outstanding premiums will be retroactive and eligible for the DMC payments. So how do you sign up for the program? You call your local office. I would recommend calling them and setting up a time to come in and visit with them. Read publications from your local dairy cooperative, from your milk handler, from producer organizations, your extension publications and agents, and other outside sources. Educate yourself as much as you possibly can to know which option is best going to suit your operation. Your local FSA office is not going to be able to advise you on what to do. Remember, the last date to sign up is September 20th of 2019. So as I said, the margins drastically changed. This is the new margins for January, February, March, and April. This was announced late by the department on Friday afternoon. So this is an increase for producers in their payment rate. So does anybody have any questions?
Lisa, there was one question that popped up in chat is, what if you choose the lock-in for 5 years and then sell out during those 5 years?
If you choose the lock-in for 5 years and you sell out, then you are only due the money. So we are doing it to the absolute date. So if you quit milking on June the 17th, 2020, you'd owe us a premium from January 1 to June 17th, 2020. Remaining you would not owe. However, remember, if you gave us allowed to use that credit and you didn't use up all of that credit, we're not going to cash that payment out to you.
Okay, great. We've probably got time for a question or two. While if you want to stop sharing, Lisa, and we'll move it to Scott Brown's presentation to keep us on time. I remind everybody that we have everybody muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself if you've got a quick question. I muted everybody just because we got 37 participants online and to keep the voice quality high. But Scott, if you want to go ahead and hit the share button and get your presentation up and going, we probably have time to answer any other questions coming up right now. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. If there's any questions popping up while Scott's getting his presentation, hit the share button.
Joe, can you see my presentation?
Not yet. There we go, Scott. Now we can see your presentation.
Very good.
Okay, I don't see anything popping up on chat. I think we'll go ahead and let you take off and remind everybody that if they want to put a question into the chat box, we'll hit those when we finish. Otherwise, we'll stay online and answer questions after Dr. Brown's finished. Scott, over to you.
So thanks very much, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you here for a few minutes. So I know some of you can probably see a presentation. It looks like to me some of you are just also dialed in by phone as well. So I will try to explain as best I can as we go. I will start this afternoon by putting the same slide up that Lisa had up earlier. So for me, just to remind those of you that are in the less than 5 million pounds of production history category, being able to choose an option like $9.50 for 15 cents is a much lower premium than we saw under the old margin protection program. And one certainly needs to look at DMC differently than we did MPP under the 2014 Farm Bill. For those that might be trying to protect, I will say that is a different situation when I have to pay $1.813 for $8 coverage. That is a much higher burden in terms of the premium costs. So you'll find me focused very much on Tier 1 and the kinds of premium costs that exist as the most important choice maybe that you get to make. I use the next slide. All right, so Economist, we hardly ever tell you what you should do when it comes to program participation. However, for 2019, we already know with what's in the books that on the first 5 million pounds of production history, if you want to get the maximum dollars back from this program relative to the premium you pay, you want to take $9.50 coverage. So take $9.50 coverage on 95% of your production history. I can tell you that with certainty today. So this decision for 2019 is frankly simple. You don't need to wait to see more of the months come in. So sometimes I might make this more difficult for FSA, saying wait until the last to see how much margins are reported. But given what we already know for the first 4 months that are out there, take $9.50, take it on 95% of your production history up to 5 million pounds. All right. As Lisa alluded to, there was a change last Friday in now instead of the old alfalfa price that had been used traditionally in the MPP margin, it's a blend of 50% of the old price and 50% of this new Supreme alfalfa price series that USDA started reporting as a result of the 2018 Farm Bill. So the payments, so you'd get $1.79 at $9.50 for January, $1.59 in February, 84 cents in March, 68 cents in April. Again, this is a no-brainer to take that. $9.50 coverage on your first 5 million pounds of production history and cover 95% of what you can up to 5 million pounds. I like to remind folks that the change, all right, so under the old MPP, the highest coverage level one could choose was $8. Over the 2000 to 2018 period, only 43% of the time would we have triggered a payment under the old MPP program if you picked $8 coverage. However, under the new $9.50 available on the first 5 million pounds, that DMC margin would have triggered 70% of the time. That is a important difference. So lower premiums, it triggers more often. Those two things ought to make you think harder about how you want to participate. And I will suggest DMC is a much stronger safety net on that first 5 million pounds than we ever saw under the old MPP program. We can always look backwards as some indication of how these programs operate. So for those that see the chart, the gold bars here tell you the average payment you would have received on an annual basis over the 2000 to 2018 period, while the blue bar is the higher Tier 2 premium, which does stop at $8, and the Tier 1 premium is the black bar that goes all the way to $9.50. For those that don't see the slide, here's the take-home point. Over the average payment over the 2000 to 2018 period would have been $1.51 and at $9.50, and it would have cost you 15 cents to get that $1.51 if you did it every year, suggesting a pretty good return relative to the premium that you have to pay. For those of you that might be on the phone that have more than 5 million pounds of production history to cover, You're going to want to look occasionally at whether you want some fairly cheap premium or coverage levels in that 5 to 550 range perhaps, but we're really going to stay focused on that first 5 million pounds of production history. For those that have more than 5 million pounds, I think the tool that Lisa referred to is really important for you to look at as you make that election above 5 million pounds. Now, having shown you some of that history, I say, put that behind you. It's how DMC works going forward that's going to be most important. I sometimes like to remind us that we frankly have had less volatility in margins in the last few years. Unfortunately, those have been less volatility at lower margin levels. How it's worked but in the past may not be how it works in front of us. I guess repeat in many ways Lisa's comment that, so this ought to be risk management for you, a risk management tool for you to use. It is a lot of thought in terms of where you think milk prices are headed. If you have low milk prices, high milk prices, but maybe just as important is where feed prices go in front of us. I use the next slide here just to point out that given what corn futures have done in the last 3 weeks, will have lowered the DMC margin by about 90 cents. Now, we haven't realized those corn prices yet for sure, but sometimes the futures markets are good predictors of the futures and of the future, and sometimes they're not. The weather that we've seen this spring has certainly moved corn prices quickly, and being able to protect against that risk might be really important as we move forward. I quickly give you, so going forward is most important, I will say an annual DMC margin that's somewhere between $9 and $10 is kind of where we'd say that long-term outlook is. So you shouldn't expect to receive a payment every month for sure, but on average, it should be in the money part of the time and part of the time not. I use this to show you some milk prices, and sorry for those of you that aren't able to see the presentation as we go. So it has it labeled as 10th percentile and 90th percentile, the gold line. So that gold line being the 10th percentile, think of that as high milk prices, and we'll get to that in a minute. The blue one being low milk prices. I want to talk about how does this program operate if we have $14 all milk, so low milk prices versus $22 all milk, high milk prices. And you see the median prices there of roughly, I would say, $18 over the next several years is kind of where the median falls out. Under a low milk price scenario, we could see at $9.50 coverage payments that exceed $4 a hundredweight of eligible production. So that's a huge boost, I think, to the bottom line in that first 5 million pounds. The median would suggest payments of somewhere around 50 cents, depending on the year. But I remind you, under high milk prices, you'll likely not get a payment under the program. You would much rather prefer not to get that payment, by the way, if we can have $22 all milk. So there are some options ahead that matter in terms of where milk prices go. I sometimes remind us of, for me, the harder thing to talk about today is, should I go ahead and tell you to sign up for all 5 years or not to get that 25% premium discount? That question really depends on where we see margins going in years 2 through 5. If I want to make it easier, though, perhaps I say, you know what, I'm willing to make that judgment of, I just want to go ahead and lock in for all 5 years. I want that 25% discount in premiums. I'll let you as individuals make that choice. I can't really go beyond saying for 2019, I'd sure want you to sign up for $9.50 and take 95% coverage up to 5 million pounds. So in terms of farm size, so I have a graph that just reminds us at what are, and again, remember the 10th that you see in these graphs, that would be high milk prices. The 90th would be low milk prices. On a 100 cow operation, $9.50, $9 coverage provides a much stronger safety net than $4 coverage would provide. And it will really help these operations in periods of low margins. However, in a 1,000 cow operation, where I have a lot of production history above 5 million pounds, that 9 and 950 coverage options helps on the first 5 million pounds, so we get a little bit of benefit in that program payment, but not a whole lot. So it does have some size information. I kind of close by just reminding us that DMC is a stronger safety net than the industry's frankly had in several years. I'd even go as far as to say prior to the MPP, DMC provides a much stronger safety net. I think we're going to spend more on this program than the Congressional Budget Office gave in terms of scores. It won't be perfect for everyone. It's just one tool in the toolbox. If I had some things I want you to be paying attention to, I don't think this program will be supply inducing, but how others participate should affect your participation, because I think it will make supplies more stubborn to adjust lower in tough financial periods. Most important is going to be just how what happens to milk price volatility as we go ahead. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Joe and see if we have any questions.
Okay, Scott, I'm looking through chat room. I'm going to unmute all, so anybody that wants to join in, the voice quality may deteriorate, but anybody that's got a quick question can jump right in here. One question I've seen on chat is, and this is more for Lisa, when will the FSA begin making payments for those people who sign up on it?
Joe, I haven't had an official word on when payments will be issued. If I were a guessing person, I will be not very optimistic and say by August, but possibly sooner. But don't hold me to it either way. Nobody has released that information. So if you come in and sign up today and you sign up for 950 coverage and we release the money in the middle of July, you'll get the money.
And thereafter, it would happen every month?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But remember, we're always the margin. For instance, we do not have the May announcement for the margin level, and we won't have that until the end of June. So we're always 30 days behind.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to be silent here for a minute. Anybody out there that wants to ask a question, just go ahead.
I'm here at the Southwest Center. We were wondering, if you lock in at 5 years, are you locking into the same trigger price and milk being protected, or are you just locking into participating in the program?
You are locking in for 5 years at the coverage level you selected on the day you signed up in 2019. So you select 950, then you have 950 for 5 years, and you receive 25% discount on that premium due.
Lisa, to follow up that question, are you also locking in your percentage participation at that same time for the whole 5 years?
Yes, you are.
The question really is whether you want to spend 15 cents this year and make an annual decision, or take the 25% discount and take an 11-cent spend for all 5 years if you're buying the 950. Other questions?
I agree, Joe. I think the next option that the producer really needs to think about is the credit, whether to take the credit or the cash, because FSA will not refund any unused credit.
So if a person is thinking about getting out of dairy in the next year or so, he may want to take the 50% cash. But if he's going to continue to dairy, he may choose to take the 75% credit and use that to fund DMC premiums. Is that right?
That's right, Joe. That's exactly right. The 75% is in your letter that the producer was mailed. So then it would seem logical that you would then figure out what coverage level you want this year, and will that 75% pay the premium?
Joe, this is Brian Regal. I was wondering on that credit, when would that money be seen if somebody elects to take the credit?
So Brian, this is Lisa. Welcome. The credit is at FSA, and once you sign, so if you sign up for the credit, when you come in for 19, you have to come in and elect what you want to do with that on a separate form than what you do to sign up for DMC. So you say, I want to use this credit to be applied toward my DMC. Then if your credit is $10,000 and your premium $7,000, then we use all that credit toward that $10,000 premium, and you still owe us $3,000. Or if we use it, we don't need it all, then it just rolls over to next year.
What about if I want to cash out?
You cannot cash out the credit. If you choose the 75%, the money stays here. It does not leave the agency. It only is applied toward premiums.
But on the 50% election, you can cash out, correct?
That is exactly correct.
And when would that money be available?
Money is available today.
Okay.
I see there's
Thank
another
you.
question in chat that says, can you run the calculations on the high feed cost milk price on their margin versus low feed cost? Just a quick example. Scott, that might be your example. If you ran through some examples of high milk price, but what about high and low feed price? We've got December corn futures at 470 today. What are high corn prices going to do to this, and what are low corn prices going to do?
Sorry, Joe. I was trying to unmute to get back in the conversation. So I think the easy way maybe to talk about this right now, so given where corn futures set for new crop corn this fall, you're probably in a scenario where at $9.50 coverage, you're really protecting about $19 U.S. all milk, maybe a little higher than that. I'd remind folks that, you know, from a feed cost perspective, we're a long ways from getting this crop in the bin. I think things have moved in a better position for some folks over the last week. So we just don't really know what that crop looks like yet. But I just remind you, one can take those feed costs and say, you know, we're going to protect somewhere $19+ U.S. all milk. And that's the way to think about it. Now, again, I just remind you all, for 19, this is a fairly easy decision, as we've been saying all along. You're going to get more money on your first 5 million pounds of production history by signing up for $9.50 than anything else. Now, for me, the 2020 to 2023 is less clear. And in many ways, the decision might be, am I trying to save 15 cents on years where I don't think there's going to be any kind of payment by being able to elect annually versus going ahead and signing up for all 5 to get that 25% discount? And I think that's what you have to weigh. And I say all the time, if I was had that crystal ball that was perfect, I wouldn't be here on this conference call today. I'd be doing something else.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's one other question coming in from Southwest that says, can you please confirm the dates for the production history? Lisa, that's your question.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by confirm the dates for production history. So I will say, the production history for any dairy that participated in MPP and still commercially marketing milk, that production history is automatically transferred to DMC, and there's none of the new rules for determining a type of dairy operation apply. You're automatically in. If you participated in MPP and had production history, you're in. You got it. Same production history. Your production history, if you participated in the market facilitation program, and we have never seen you before, we have to redo that form and we recalculate it. And again, it'll be based on 11, 12, or 13 high, or if you started between 13 and current year, then there's some other options for you to choose in determining your production history. Is that what your question was?
Yes, thank you very much. Specifically also kind of touching on the new producer from 13 to current, is there any way to get a production bump if they've been growing their herd?
The production bump is not going to apply in DMC. However, if you were never participating in MPP and you came in today, so if you were a dairy that participated in 11, 12, and 13, and you walk in today and we've never seen you before, there is a bump, and I'm going to get that number wrong. I believe it's 1.081. I'm going to look in my notice here that's published this morning. But you will get a small bump. You'll get it that one. It's 1.0186. If you are a dairy operation that started between 13 and today, the same will apply. There are some options about whether or not, depending, that 2013 to 2014 is a little harder to gauge, and I'd rather not try to explain that. Let's do that on an individual. But basically, anybody that has a full year between 14 and 19, they'll get to choose their highest year, and then they'll get that bump. After that point, there will be no more bumps.
Okay, folks, it looks like we've got about 3 minutes left. This is a chance to get a question in. Anybody got a question they didn't get answered to date? Just to remind everybody that, as Lisa said, USDA did change the formula slightly on Friday. And so rather than using the national alfalfa hay price, they use a blend of national alfalfa hay price and supreme national alfalfa hay price to better capture the cost of alfalfa going into dairy farms. And that did change the margins that had been published in the past for January, February, March, and April, and actually to the producer's benefit. So those payments for those people who bought in the high level, who choose to buy high levels of coverage, those payments will be higher than some of us have been quoting. And it's not a trivial change. So good news for dairy producers on that part. That I'm going to ask one more time if there's any other questions. And I do see one coming in. How does the sequestration figure into the payment?
Joe, what we'll do is we'll take that calculation that I showed you, and basically if you take your hundredweight, you divide it by 12, you get your hundredweight per month, multiply it by the payment rate, and then they will reduce it by that 6.2 sequester rate. And the producer will get the net.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks to Lisa Allen and to Scott Brown both for participating and sharing your expertise and kicking off the 2019 Dairy Margin Coverage Program. We appreciate everybody participating, and those of you that still have questions to answer, we reiterate, make an appointment with your local FSA office, and if they can't answer the questions, then we'll chase it on. They'll chase it on up further the line for you. But we hope this has given you some background on the new program, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you all.